Shalom Aleichem, Malachei Hasharet, Malachei Elyon, Melech Malachei Malachim, Hakadosh Baruch Hu, Boachem LeShalom. Shalom, Malachei Elyon, Melech Malachei Malachim, Hakadosh Baruch Hu, Baruchuni LeShalom, Malachei Hashalom. Shalom, Malachei Hashalom, Malachei Elyon, Melech Malachei Malachim, Hakadosh Baruch Hu.
Yes, everyone. We are brought here accompanied by so many angels, all of those Malachei Hasheret who have been traveling with us all week up until this point, invisible to our eye, but accompanying us through every twist and turn of the week, making sure we are not alone. And finally have brought us here into a space of pause and rest and breath. So I invite you to breathe. And to arrive here. Join me in Yedid Nefesh, page 10. Yedid Nefesh Shav HaRachaman Mishoch Avda Eratzona Yarutz Avda Kimo Yishtachavel mul hadara ki erav lo yediduta mino vetsu vechotam Adonai Ziv haolam nafshi cholat ahavata ana elna rifana Biharod la noam ziva as tichazek v'tidrape v'haitalach shivchat olam ותהיינו רחמך חוסנה על בית אוהבה כי זה כמה נכסוף לראות בתפארת עוזה אנא אלי מחמד ליבי חושנה ואל תתעלם יגלנה ופרוס חביבי עלי את סוכת שלומה תאיר ארץ מכבודה נגילה ונשמחה בה מהר אהוב כי במועד וחונני כימי עולם ידעי די 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 ידעי די 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 ידעי 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 די 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 Page 11.
Lechune ranena, lechune ranena, lechune ranena la Adonai. Lechune ranena, lechune ranena, lechune ranena la Adonai. Naria, naria, letzor yishenu, lekatma fana betodah. Naria, naria, letzor yishenu, bizmiranai alon. Lechune ranena, lechune ranena, lechune ranena la Adonai. Lechune ranena, lechune ranena, lechune ranena la Adonai.
Nari haletzuri sheinu ki al gadol Adonai melech gadol hakol Elohim asher biyado machkarei haaretz v'tofot harim lo. Arba'im shana akut bedor v'homar amto elevahem v'hem lo yadu derachai asher nishbati li'api im yavod al menuchati. Shiru l'Adonai shir chadash, Shiru Ladonai Kol Haaretz, Shiru Ladonai Baruch Hu Shemo, Asru Miyom Le'yom Yeshuato, Safru Bagoyim Kivodo B'chol Ha'amim Nifleotav Ki Gadol Adonai Umhulal Me'od Norahu Al Kol Elohim Ki Kol Elohei Ha'amim Elilim Ba'adonai Shamayim Asa Hod V'Hadar Lefanav Oz V'Tiferet B'Mikdasho Havul Adonai Mishpechot Amim Havul Adonai Kavod V'Hoz Havul Adonai Kivod Shemo Zehu Mincha Uvo Lechatzrota Yishtachavu Ladonai B'chad HaKodesh Tilu Mipanav Kol Haaretz Yimru Bagoyim Adonai Malach Aftikon Tevel Baal Timot Yadinarim Mesharim Yismechu Hashamayim V'tagel Haaretz Yiram Hayam Umelo Yalos Shaddai V'chol asher bo Az Yeranenu Kol Hatzeyah Lifnei Adonai Kiva Lishpot Haaretz Yishpot Tevel B'tzedek Ve'amin Be'emunato Yanai 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 Adonai Malach Tegel On the bottom of page 16. Or Zarua, Latzadi, Ul Yisrael Simcha, Simcha. Or Zarua, Latzadi, Ul Yisrael Simcha, Yisrael Simcha. Or Zarua, Latzadi, Ul Yisrael Simcha, Ul Yisrael Simcha. Simchu tzadikim baranai v'hodu lezecher kodsho. Mizmor shir l'Adonai shir chadai. Lifnei Adonai kiva lishpot haaretz, yishpot tevel b'tzedek, ve'amim b'misharim. Join it together on page 20 with Romamu.
Romemu Adonai Eloheinu ve'yishtachavu lehar kosho. Romemu Adonai Eloheinu ve'yishtachavu lehar kosho. Ki kadosh Adonai Eloheinu Romemu. Ki kadosh Adonai Eloheinu Romemu. Romemu Adonai Eloheinu ve'yishtachavu le'ar kosho. Romemu Adonai Eloheinu ve'yishtachavu le'ar kosho. Ki kadosh Adonai Eloheinu Romemu. Ki kadosh Adonai Eloheinu Romemu.
So if you feel like standing, getting on your feet, you're invited. And if you're cozy where you are, you can stay right where you are. We're on page 21. Mismor leDavid, havu l'Adonai, bnei Elim, havu l'Adonai, kavod va'oz, havu l'Adonai, kirvot shemo ishtakavu l'Adonai, v'hadra kodesh, kol Adonai. Al hamayim el hakavod hirim Adonai al mayim rabim kol Adonai b'kohah kol Adonai b'hadar kol Adonai shover arazim v'shaver Adonai את ארזי הלבנון, וירקידם כמו עגל לבנון, וסיריון כמו בן רמים, כל אדוני חוצה לבותש, כל אדוני יחיל מדבר, יחיל אדוני מדבר קדש, כל אדוני יחולל איילות, ויחסו יערות, ופחלו, ולא אומר כבוד, אדוני למבול ישב, וישב אדוני מלך לעולם, אדוני עוז לעמו ייתן, אדוני יברך את עמו בשלום. ינאי נאי נאי 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 ינאי נאי Just this whole situation. Now that Dr. Fauci is recommending double masks, we've switched to double masks, but 2 masks is a lot of facial pressure. Here we go. It's very interesting. I think I'm going to say a little more about this next week. But entering into the month of Adar, which is a time, of course, coming closer to the holiday of Purim, when we're thinking a lot about masks, it's interesting to reflect on the ways that masks help to reveal some part of our true self and also conceal some part of our true self. And just the act of leading prayer with a mask on, I still haven't totally gotten used to, even though I've been doing it for a number of months. There's something very unnatural about trying to communicate the fullness of who you are authentically when half your way of expressing yourself is covered. And even though I can't see my own face, and you're looking at me, I'm not looking at me, but there's something that's even hard to express, knowing that half of this is sort of cut off. Someone said to me earlier this week that they're looking at my eyes, that they're sort of trying to understand, like, what's going on? Can I sort of see what's going on in her face just through seeing someone's eyes? And we become attuned to all of those little parts of how we can try to see inside someone's soul when we don't have the normal cues of what's under the hood, so to speak. It's actually that sense of strangeness and the sense of distance that I wanted to talk about a little bit here before we sing Ana Bakoach. This parsha is one of the few times, one of the many times that we hear the Torah calling to us saying, "You shall not oppress a ger, a stranger, for you know the nefesh of the ger. You know the whole being of this stranger, having yourselves been strangers in the land of Egypt." And my friend Rabbi Zohar Atkins says that the reason why we as human beings are sort of naturally conditioned to reject the stranger is not that it's opportunistic. It's not because the stranger is somebody who's easy to oppress or someone who doesn't have an advocate or a defender except for God. He says the reason why we oppose the stranger is because we ourselves are strangers. And we hate that. When we fear the stranger, it's really because we fear that which is strange in ourselves. And the stranger who stands out in a crowd as someone other provokes our own fear of standing out. The stranger who is vulnerable provokes our own shame at being vulnerable. And he writes that the fact that we are created in the divine image necessitates that we are all strangers. And so what it means to really welcome the stranger is, on an existential level, none other than to welcome that part of ourselves that is beyond categorization, that doesn't belong to a group or a tribe. He says, I love this. Love the stranger means love what is singular. Love what is idiosyncratic. Do not oppress the stranger means allow for more weirdness in oneself and others. Maximize diversity wherever possible. I think that is so hard to do, but it very much represents my idea of what a flourishing community looks like. Not where we are all carbon copies of one another, but where we really maximize that which makes us singular and unique and more fully represents that wholeness of the entire divine image. I want to just share a poem, and then we'll go and sing Ana Bakoach. This is one of my favorites, and it contains this idea. It's by Derek Walcott, and it's called Love After Love. The time will come when, with elation, You will greet yourself arriving at your own door, in your own mirror, and each will smile at the other's welcome and say, sit here, eat. You will love again the stranger who was yourself. Give wine, give bread, give back to your heart to itself, to the stranger who has loved you all your life, whom you ignored for another, who knows you by heart. Take down the love letters from the bookshelf, the photographs, the desperate notes. Peel your own image from the mirror. Sit, feast on your life. Anna Bechoa Gedula Yemincha Tatir Tzerura Kabel Rinat Amcha Sagveinu Taveinu Nora Anna Bechoa Gedula Yemincha Tatir Tzerura Kabel Rinat Amcha Sagveinu Taveinu Nora Anna Bechoa Gedulat Yamincha Tatir Tzerura Tatir Tzerura Kabel Rinat Amecha Sagveinu Taveinu Nora Maybe just inviting some part of you that feels distant, some part of you that feels estranged to come home, to sit, to be here. We'll offer prayer for all of the people, all of the souls who are in need of healing. We'll share these words on the slides. You can join us and sing along, and invite you to share all names of people that you're praying for with us in the chat. Misha Beira, Avotenu, Mikor HaChaim, Leimotenu, Vayirafeh et hacholim, Cholim El Narifana 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 El Narifana. Wishing all of them refuah shlema, a full healing. So we've reached this moment of welcoming the Shabbat bride. This is a melody I learned in New York a couple of years ago to Psalm 150 actually, but it's suited for Lechado D, I think, and just a lot of joy. And as we enter into Adar, as we're just trying to find little specks and spaces of joy, even the tiniest specks, this hopefully will be a bridge for us. We're on page 23. Lichadoti likrat kala, pene Shabbat nikabela. Lichadoti likrat kala, pene Shabbat nikabela. Shamor v'zachor b'dibor echad, Ishmiyanu al ha'meyuchad, Adonai echad u'shmo.
Shabbat done?
Yeah, it's done.
Here, go back. Using this, oh, here, so you have to go back.
Hi, everybody. Oh. Our internet went out. We'll be up and running in just a second. Hold on. We'll come back. Oh, you can see us. No, you do have video. We're on video.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah,
Yes.
yeah.
I see them.
There we are. Can they hear us? Oh. Robin says they can hear us.
Mm-hmm.
Okay. All right. We overpowered the system.
Mm-hmm.
Very sorry for the technical delays. I feel like maybe they didn't like my Lejado D tune. I don't know. It feels like it's cursed. we're gonna try it again. All right. I have this sound that I make when I need to like reset, and Amy laughs at me because I do this like doo-doo-doo-doo-doo-doo. So that's my mental reset sound. Doo-doo-doo-doo-doo.
New to me.
Okay, great. Now we're back. Okay. We're going to start from the top. Page 23. Lechado di likrat kala, pene Shabbat nikabela. Lechado di likrat kala, pene Shabbat nikabela. Shamor v'zachor b'dibor echad, השמיענו אל המיוחד, אדוני אחד ושמו אחד, לשם ולתפארת ולתהילה. לך דודי לקראת כלה, פני שבת נקבלה. לקראת שבת לכו ונלכה, כי היא מקור הברכה. מראש מקדם נסוכה, סוף מעשה בשבת תפילה. לך דודי לקראת כלה, פני שבת נקבלה. מקדש מלך עיר מלוכה, קומי צאי מתוך הפכה. רב לך שבט ועמק הבכה, והוא יחמול עלייך חמלה. לך דודי לקראת כלה, פני שבת נקבלה. התנערי מעבר קומי, לישי בגדי תפארתך עמי. על יד בן ישי בית הלחמי, קורבה אל נפשי גאלה. לך דודי לקראת כלה, פני שבת נקבלה. התעוררי, התעוררי, כי באורך קומי אורי. אורי, אורי, שיר דברי, כבוד אדוני עלייך נגלה. לך דודי לקראת כלה, פני שבת נקבלה. לך דודי לקראת כלה, פני שבת נקבלה. לא תבושי ולא תקלמי, מה תשתוכחי ומה תצמי, בך יחסו אני העמי, ונבנתה עיר על תלה. לך דודי לקראת כלה, פני שבת נקבלה. והיו למשיסו שוסייך ורחקו פה, נבל עלייך יסיס עלייך,
Elohai kinsos chatan al kala lecha dodi likrat kala penei Shabbat nikabela yamin usmol tifroti ve'et Adonai Tariti al yadish ben parti ben ismecha ben nagila lecha dodi likrat kala penei Shabbat nikabela Boi leshalom atzeret bala gam besimcha uvetzola toch emunei am segula boi chala Olecha dodi, olikrat kala, penei Shabbat nikabela. Yanai nanai nai, ay nanai nai, yanai nanai nai, ay nanai nai, yanai nanai nai, ay nanai nai nai nai, yanai nanai nai, ay nai nai nai, oh ay nai nai, ay
Over to Luna.
Mizmor shir layom hashabbat, tov le'odol Adonai, ulezamer leshimcha elyon, ulezamer leshimcha elyon. Le'giv b'boker chastecha, v'muretcha b'leilah. Alei asur v'alei navel, alei higayon bechinor. Mizmor shir leyom hashabbat, tov le'odol Adonai, ulezamer leshimcha elyon, ulezamer leshimcha elyon, ulezamer leshimcha elyon. Join me on page 29 for Psalm 93. Adonai melech geut lavesh, lavesh Adonai yozit hazar, aftikon tevel baltimor, nachon kisacha meyaz, me'olam atar. Naseu ne'arot Adonai, naseu ne'arot kol נמנו מאוד, בביתך נאווה קודש, אדוני לאורך ימים.
Thank you, Luna. We'll turn to Mourner's Kaddish on page 30. This Shabbos, we are remembering Teddy Haber and Dora Moran, as well as the yahrzeits of Lillian Strongwater Cohen, Sol Friedman, Erwin Aaron Friedman, Bennett Ginberg, Benjamin Eisenberg, Larry Jabin, Joni Cower, Donald Langstein, Edward Jerome Langstein, Thelma Bell Lewis, Saul Linowitz, Ruth Finder Mayer, Ida Plotnikov, Victor Sassone, Lila Solson, and Pauline Strauss. Yehi zichronam livracha. May all of their memories be blessings. Join me in Mourner's Kaddish. If there are others that you're remembering this Shabbos, you can share their names with us in the chat. Yitgadal v'yitkadash shemei Rabbah, v'alma divrach hirutei, v'amlich malchutei, v'chayechon u'vyomechon, u'chayei d'chol beit Yisrael, ba'agala v'zman kariv v'imru amen. Yehei shmei Rabbah mevorach le'olam u'lamei amen. Yitbarach v'yishtabach v'yipa'ar v'yitromam v'yitnaseh v'yitadar v'yitaleh v'yitalal shmei dekudusha brichu le'ela min kol birchata v'shirata tushbechata v'nechamata da'amiran b'alma v'yimru amen. Yehei shlama Rabbah min shemaya v'chayim aleinu ve'al Yisrael v'yimru amen. Oseh shalom bimromav, hu ya'aseh shalom, aleinu ve'al kol Yisrael, ve'al kol yoshvei tevel, v'imru, amen. Amen, amen. Can you turn my volume down a little bit? Okay, thanks. So, Shabbat Shalom, you'll see now, you can see my face because Amy has moved into her other office space, and we're going to do a little bit of conversational teaching tonight. We try to change it up, keep it interesting around here, and then there's all the changes and the interesting things that happen to us that we can't predict, so it's never a dull moment on a Friday night at Or Chadash, but we are excited to share some words of Torah and some reflections with you on Parshat Mishpatim. So tonight we're going to explore one of the mitzvot that is laid out in Mishpatim, which is the idea of Shemitah, the sabbatical year. And so it shows up in our Parsha in Exodus chapter 23, verses 10 through 11, which say, 6 years you shall sow your land and gather in its yield, but in the 7th you shall let it rest and lie fallow. Let the needy among your people eat of it, and what they leave let the wild beasts eat. You shall do the same with your vineyards and your olive groves. And so this Shemitah year, the sabbatical year, gets its name from the word here in this verse, tishmatena, which really means you shall release the land. You're just going to let it go. You're not going to farm it. You're not going to work it. Just let it lie fallow for 1 year out of every 7. So this is part of many different biblical agricultural laws that are laid out in the Torah that really apply to the land of Israel singularly. And we're not going to get into tonight how Shemitah is actually observed in the land of Israel in modern times, although it's quite interesting. But we're going to think of more as Shemitah as sort of a theoretical concept, because we don't really know historically if this was actually practiced by the ancient Israelites. We have some sparse evidence which sort of leads scholars and historians to think that perhaps Shemitah, the sabbatical year, wasn't practiced to the level, this very high level that it is laid out in the Torah of actually letting the whole land go to rest every 7 years. But even just thinking about this sort of in a theoretical way, a practice like this of letting the land lie fallow would have major significant effects on a society. It would affect the land and the soil and the crops themselves. It would affect the economy in terms of buying and selling crops and how the economic system is distributed. And then it's going to affect the food supply, certainly what is available in that year and what the food supply would have to be in years leading up to and after in order to ensure that people have enough to eat. So I want us to dig a little bit tonight, and Amy's going to help us really figure out what is the intent behind this practice and what can we learn from it today. So Amy, where do you want to take this?
Well, you read us one verse, 2 verses about Shemitah, and it doesn't give us a lot of detail. So I want to share with you a Rashi teaching that's actually on a different place in Torah where we learn more about the Shemitah year, which is Leviticus 25. The verses of Torah he's commenting on say, "You shall not reap the aftergrowth of your harvest or gather the grapes of your untrimmed vines. It shall be a year of complete rest for the land. But you may eat whatever the land during its Sabbath will produce." So the question we always ask is, Makashela Rashi, what is bothering Rashi here? Rashi wants to know, what does it mean that you may not reap or gather what grows, but you can eat it? Rashi says, this means you can't gather it all in with the intention of taking possession and ownership of it, like you might do with other harvests. Instead, it should be hefker, ownerless, for everyone to take freely. And Rashi goes on to say, you're not prohibited from eating it, but from treating it as your own. You should think of it as everyone having equal rights to produce in the 7th year. You, your hired workers, and anyone who resides with you. Now you, Rabbi Lauren, taught about hefker back in the fall. And I remember because it's a really captivating idea to me, this ownerlessness. Will you talk us through it? Talk us through ownerlessness.
Yeah, I first got introduced to this idea of hefker, this Hebrew term hefker, when I was studying in yeshiva, and there was a little table in our cafeteria right by the microwave, and it was called the hefker table. And it wasn't lost and found. It wasn't meant for like people who had lost things to then reclaim their possessions. It was the ownerless table. It's the free for taking table. And so, anything you weren't going to eat and you wanted to give to someone else, a spare banana or, a winter hat that you were tired of, it would just go on the hefker table, and magically all the stuff on the hefker table, got claimed and picked up, usually by the end of the day. And it was really about a kind of free exchange of property in community, recognizing that we all have stuff that we're not benefiting from, and we want other people to be able to take advantage of that. And so sort of this idea of hefker, I think, is imagining that there are collective goods that can float around between us and have no singular owner, except for perhaps God. Perhaps if they have any owner, it is the divine. But no human being is really the sole owner, can really be the sole owner of any stuff.
That is making me think of the word is not used, but another example that comes up in Mishpatim that I think is familiar to many of us because it comes up in many places in the Torah, this idea that your first fruits and your firstborn children, your firstborn sons and your firstborn cattle belong to God. You know how shop owners sometimes they'll frame the first dollar they earn and hang it up in their store because why do they do that? Because the first one is so special that you want to hold on to it. Like if there is anything that you would feel super possessive and protective of, it's the first one, the first produce. And this is telling you that even that is not yours. And if that is not yours, all the more so do we need to loosen our grip on other things. But getting back to the fields, okay, what do you think Hefker would look like specifically in a Shemitah year? Like, what would that look like with your field?
I mean, I think the Torah is imagining that the fences come down, whatever barriers you put up between your property and everyone else is going to be dropped entirely, and then anyone can come in, and it's just sort of open season, which I have to admit, like, is a scary sort of thing. I don't know, we like our protective structure. We like knowing what's mine, what's yours, like a real clarity of whose is whose. But this is saying, I mean, very explicitly, it's not just for everyone. Actually, it's not just open season. It's for the poor specifically. This produce in the seventh year is for the people who don't have enough to feed themselves. And if they don't, and once they've taken their fill of it, it's for the animals too, which I think is interesting to think about.
Yeah. Yeah, it makes me think almost of the idea of manna, where you gather what you need for the day, but you're not supposed to collect hordes and hordes of it and, and fill it up and keep it to yourself.
Yeah.
In the beginning of the pandemic, just about a year ago, I had an experience of, for the first time in a long time, I mean, it's this tiny, tiny little shadow experience, but for the first time in a long time, I couldn't just go to the grocery store and get, the particular brand of seasoned croutons that I like to eat and I need to eat them every day. There was much more of a sense of, you will take part of whatever is in the grocery store, and there were limits on what you could take, and stuff might not be there. Do you see any glimmer of connection in that experience?
Yeah, I mean, I think those of us who have lived with relative privilege in our lives, have been used to knowing exactly where our food is going to come from and being able to sort of know that if I go to the store, I will get whatever I want, or maybe I'll go to the second store, the third store if they don't have what I want at the first store. But I think many of us got this taste of a little bit of tenuousness and insecurity early on in the pandemic. And I think there's that parallel of, again, ownerlessness. It's slightly different, but it's a sense of, I don't have total control. And this realization that I know I came to, where I don't generally pay attention to food systems and think about every little piece of what has to happen in order for, that apple that was grown somewhere, even in this country, or, that kumquat that was grown like halfway across the world to get to me, or even like paper towels and toilet paper, every single thing that has to go right in order for them to get to my doorstep. And we got this taste of, wow, I thought I was in control, but I'm not in control.
Yeah. We came to this text tonight. So we've been focusing as a community for the past month or two on the issue of hunger and food insecurity in our own community here in Atlanta. And so we came to this text wondering what lens it might offer us, what kind of spiritual teaching it might offer us related to food insecurity. So right now, today, in our own city of Atlanta, 1 in 7 people and 1 in 5 children do not know where their next meals will come from. They are food insecure. I just want to pause on that for a minute, because if you picture the houses on your street, and every 5th house wasn't able to get a secure line of food, can you imagine the anxiety that would come from that? And this is not because there's not enough food. We know that there's plenty of food. It's because of the distribution of the food. And so there's a portion of our community who lives in this state of long-term vulnerability, only able to gather what they need in the very immediate term from whatever communal resources are available. So food pantries or urban food forests, while the rest of our community gets to avoid the vulnerability altogether. And it feels to me like a funhouse mirror version of Shemitah, like the shared experience of vulnerability and mutual trust and pooled resources and intertwined fates, and the democratization of the whole thing is gone.
Yeah, and I think seeing that inequity is something that for many of us, when we know about it, that becomes the source of when we feel obligated to do something about it. Or the flip. Just was talking to some folks earlier today. When I know and feel that sense of gratitude and blessing for how much I have been given, that is where the obligation comes from. That I don't hoard, that I don't stockpile, that I then say just as freely and as without attachment as all of this was given to me, so too I'm going to let it flow from me. Not just 1 year out of 7, but on a regular basis. And with the spirit of, I have to do this. It's actually not so much a choice, but it's something I'm compelled to do. Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. So what's the ask? What are we asking for?
What are we asking? I mean, in some ways, there's sort of like a long game and a short game here. The issues, the systemic issues that lead to food insecurity are big and complex, and I am not equipped to explain them to you standing on one foot tonight. But the short-term ask is really, I think that we can in some ways honor the spirit of this law, this teaching, by really committing to use our resources to make sure that these, communal fields, as they were, of our day are stocked fully, always. So there are always fields for people to come to take what they need, even though it doesn't undo the inequity of the system. That is a step that we can take. So yes, I do mean donate to your local food pantry, or there's an incredible urban food forest down at Brown's Mill here in Atlanta where they grow fresh produce and anyone can take from it, and you can volunteer there to help the food grow, or you can donate, or you can think monetarily and think, if I spend $100 a week or $200 a week or however much money in groceries, can I commit to giving a percentage of that back to this communal field regularly every week? The Atlanta Food Bank can really stretch a dollar quite far. So that's an avenue that is meaningful.
I mentioned earlier this week when we were talking about this that I know one of my teachers has a practice just to sort of help to create a sense of ownerlessness in herself of her own possessions and her own money in dollars, that she, in order to give tithe, to give the 10% of tzedakah that we're supposed to be giving, obligated to give it as Jews, she just has that money, that 10% automatically deducted from her paycheck every month and just goes into a separate account. And so it never even touches the pool of money that she thinks of as what she has to spend on herself and her family. It goes straight to the tzedakah fund and then flows out to the organizations to support. And I've been wanting to start that process too.
There was
just close. Yeah, go ahead.
No, I was just going to say there was one final quote. Were you going to share the quote?
Yes.
Is that what you're going to close with? Great.
Yes. So I want to share a quote from a woman named Libra, who is actually a client at the CAC, and she was asked. The CAC is the Community Assistance Center here in Sandy Springs that we help to support, which is a beneficiary of the Atlanta Community Food Bank. And so she was asked, what would you want to say if you met one of the donors who helped to support, feeding you and your family? And she said, "Thank you, because you didn't have to. You didn't have to do anything. You could have just said, 'That's not my problem.' You could have just said, 'Well, I could just throw this food in the trash because it's easier.' You didn't have to, but you did. And this says a lot about your character, and it says a lot about your heart." And this quote raised a lot of questions for Amy and me, because she says you didn't have to do anything, and she's right on a certain level. For those of us who have the means to give, nobody is forcing us to. But I think Judaism would raise the bar for us. And I think our Parsha, Mishpatim, at its core, really the whole Torah at its core, is about our obligations to one another. And it doesn't see those obligations as voluntary, you get extra points if you do this. And so perhaps, and I want to just end with this, maybe we can see mitzvah or obligation, less about the compulsory, over your head kind of mitzvah, but really from the Aramaic root of mitzvah, of tzava, which means relationship, which means inextricability, which means ways that we really enact our connections and our responsibility to one another. And so we hope that in these weeks leading up to the Hunger Walk here, you will answer this call of mitzvah by giving to one of our Or Chadash teams for the Hunger Walk, for gathering your little pod on March 7th to walk or to run, and to be in this moment and participate in all of this with us. So I want to say Shabbat Shalom and thank you to Amy, and I'm gonna mask up again. And we're gonna turn to Kiddush. Okay. Turning to page 55. Savri, Baruch atah Adonai Eloheinu melech haolam, borei peri hagafen. Baruch atah Adonai Eloheinu melech haolam, asher kitshenu b'mitzvotav v'ratzavanu, v'shabbat kodsho b'ahava uvratzon hinchilanu, zikaron l'maaseh v'reshit. Ki hu yom techila lemikrahe kodesh, zecher l'tziat Mitzrayim. Ki vanu v'acharta v'otanu kidashta mikol ha'amim, v'shabbat kodshecha v'ahava uvratzon hinchaltanu. Baruch atah Adonai mekadesh haShabbat. L'chaim, l'chaim. Turn it over to Gail now for our announcements.
Shabbat Shalom, everyone. Thank you all for your patience as we dealt with our team very quickly got us back online. And I have to say, I'm thinking in all the times that we have been online since the beginning of the pandemic, this is the very first time that we've had anything where we've had to actually go offline for a minute. So I think that's a pretty good track record. And thank you to Heather and Fred for getting us back on real quickly. So as Adar is approaching, all things Purim are getting set up. I just want to make sure everyone knows about all the opportunities to participate in all of the Purim things, and especially given what we're dealing with right now, it would be nice to have a little bit of fun, participate. So if you have not signed up to do the Mishloach Manot, you can still do that through the weekend, and that's going to be like a one-on-one where you can create a basket for someone and someone will create one for you. And then next Sunday, we will have our car safari for families, and you need to sign up for a time for that so that we can pace everybody through all the different activities and do it COVID safely. And then the following Thursday on the 25th will be the whole Megillah with a very clever game show that's going to be put on Who Wants to Be a Persian Heir, that is going to be emceed by Ben and some of our other congregants. So it should be a lot of fun. And then following that, we'll be doing a cocktail hour with a toast for Queen Esther. The ingredients for the drinks will be coming out in the next week, so you can go shopping and have everything ready to be able to participate. So please join us for all of those things, and it'll be a lot of fun. And with that, I wish you all a Shabbat Shalom.
Shabbat Shalom. We'll close with this bracha and then say goodnight. Yisimchem Elohim ke'Ephraim v'chi Menashe ke'Sarah Rivka Rachel v'Leah. Yivarechecha Adonai v'yishmerecha.
Can you hear us?
Ya'er Adonai panav elecha v'chuneka.
Can you hear us?
Yisa Adonai panav elecha v'yasem lecha shalom.
Can you hear us?
May God bless you and keep you safe and healthy. May God shine her face on you and be gracious to you. May God lift up his face towards you. May peace chase after you. May you run after peace. Let us say, Amen. And Shabbat Shalom. Shabbat Shalom, everyone. Feel free to share Shabbat Shaloms with all.
Shabbat Shalom.
Shabbat Shalom.
Shalom.
Shabbat Shalom.
Shabbat Shalom.
Shabbat Shalom.
Shabbat Shalom.
Shabbat Shalom. Shabbat Shalom.
Good Shabbos.
Shabbat Shalom.
Good Shabbos, Sandy.
Shabbat Shalom. All right, I'm hanging. Okay.
Thank you, everybody, for bearing with us.
Shabbat Shalom.
Shabbat Shalom,
Well,
Ella, Dan.
blessing.
Shalom, everybody.
Shabbat Shalom, David. Hi, Larry.
Hi, Rabbi.
Shabbat Shalom, Goodman.
Hey, Joel.
And Joel. And Peggy.
Joel, you did a nice job.
Peggy.
Shalom, look at my new hair. Shabbat shalom.
Shabbat Shalom.
Shabbat shalom. Shabbat shalom. Shabbat shalom. Shabbat shalom. Wait.
This is the dance party part of this.
Shabbat shalom. Shabbat shalom. Shabbat shalom. Shabbat shalom. Shabbat shalom.
Those are dancing for you, see?
Shabbat
Keep going, keep
Look
going.
at my new hair. Shabbat
Yeah,
shalom.
she put her hair,
Shabbat shalom.
turn around, she put her hair in a bun.
Shabbat shalom.
So,
Shabbat shalom.
so I do want to say an interesting story related to what Amy were talking about earlier is the Talmud talks about the restrictions of what you can do on the sabbatical year with your produce, and specifically if you have produce in your possession and it is no longer available in the fields, you have to get rid of it.
Yes.
So it goes back to what you're saying about collecting it, and that once it goes away in the fields and it can no longer be found, and the rabbis talk about what that means and what it means to not be found anymore, you have to get rid of any of that particular species in your possession because it's no longer valid to eat in the sabbatical year.
It's fascinating. It's really counterintuitive. And I mean, I think that is also the source of there's all these convoluted laws for how wine gets produced in Israel during the, so you have these labels on Israeli wine that's produced during the Shemitah year that say like Kedushat Shvi'it. It's like got a extra special holiness because it's sort of elevated and set apart. So it's very interesting that they somehow found a workaround to be able to actually.
And there's actually a story in Pesachim specifically about wine in the sabbatical year, where you can have sabbatical year wine as long as, and you can take it like between Israel and Babylonia and
Right.
one way is okay and the other way is not, and what you can do with it. So yeah, it's just interesting how if it might not be available in your field, but if it's available in some other field, you can tell someone that, hey, you can go over there to